Dan Dido, president and co-publisher of DC Comics, says there will never be another reboot of the DC Universe. I can guarantee you that there's going to be another reboot of this DC Universe. Why? Because the product is a complete mess. When you have a co-publisher who has to continuously explain how his universe works to readers in multiple articles, there is something clearly wrong with that product. A comic book universe is something that pretty much explains itself. It's something the reader can figure out within about a couple seconds on looking at the product. But when we come to this DC universe, nobody can really explain it. It's a bit what we've had with this co-publisher is he's created this huge map to try to explain everything to everybody when you really don't need to explain a universe. Pretty much people will look at the comics, they will look at the trade dress, they will look at the covers, and they'll figure everything out for themselves. And this is why I say there's going to be another reboot because, you know, when you have a universe that is just virtually unexplainable, how can the customer access it? How can the new customer, most of all, access that product? And it's hard for a new customer to access the DC universe because you have all these different worlds, and then you have comics from all these different worlds being put together and sold at the same time. And that leads to complete and utter confusion. Sure, there was an Earth 1 and an Earth 2, but there was only one title for Earth 1. I mean, there was a whole bunch of titles on Earth 1, but there was only maybe one or two titles set in Earth 2. And that's what made the DC Universe back in the 70s, and the early 80s pretty much accessible. Yes, there were different universes, but there were only maybe two or three that people had to deal with. But these days, we have people, we have 52 universes, and we have books from all sorts of universes and all sorts of worlds, and that's going to lead to confusion at the comic shop. And when you have confusion, that's a big problem, especially when you have new readers who want to do research and then go into back issues. When you have to go into back issues and you find out, oh, wait a minute, what's this over here? Oh, this happened and this happened. Then you have to go wade through all of this baggage and all of these bogged down stories from years ago, especially these ones from the last 15 years. It becomes pretty much a nightmare for the new reader. And that's the big problem with the DC Universe. I mean, the reputation of the DC brand is in the worst shape I have ever seen it to be. I haven't seen a brand this damaged since Disney in the 1970s and the early 1980s. And if you really want to go look that up, you can go look that up. But Disney in the 1970s and the early 1980s, that was a brand in decline. They were producing a lot of bad movies. They were producing a lot of box office bombs. And their animation division had fallen completely apart. And it wasn't until Michael Eisner came in around 84 or 85, I have to go back and check the dates, that the Disney brand started to turn itself around and went back to creating family-oriented programming and good quality family movie content. And that's when Disney started to turn around. This is what I see with the DC Comics brand. Right now, they're in a state that Disney was in the 70s and the early 80s, and they really need a new editor-in-chief to rebuild this DC Comics brand because right now the DC brand has been damaged by Dido's decade and a half of dysfunction. I mean, DC is so damaged that pretty much they can't sell comics. They've lost market share there to indies over the last couple of years. They have a hard time selling action figures. I've gone on message boards with the Fwoosh and Superhero Hype, and I've just heard the vitriol that comic fans have whenever a new DC line is announced. I don't hear people getting excited like they are for Marvel Legends, where they're pretty much enthusiastic and people are putting in pre-orders. What I'm hearing from people is, they have indifference and apathy. And when you have a product and there's indifference and apathy, you really don't want that. And then when Warner Brothers announces the Batman v Superman movie, there was a lot of negative energy. And this is one of the big problems with this current DC Comics brand. It's a lot of negative energy swirling around this product. And you really don't want that when you have a product. You really don't want to have negative energy. You want your customers to be united. You want them to be enthusiastic. You want them to be excited so that they can share their passion with others, and they can just really build that positive energy that people will start to share, and they'll start talking about it with enthusiasm. They'll start sharing the images. They'll start sharing with people. You don't see that with your DC Comics products. All you see is a lot of people who are either indifferent or they just become very angry. And that's not what you want coming into a new product. What you want coming into a new product is, again, positive energy so that people can go out and tell each other about the product. Because what sells a product, whether it be soap or superheroes, is word of mouth. And DC Comics right now has one of the worst word of mouths out there. And when you have a product like that's just long lasting like this, you really don't want to have a negative word of mouth. I mean, even TV shows like Arrow and have negative energy on them, and you really don't want to have that. And this is why I say, this Dan Dido is pretty much going to be on its way out because there's too much negative energy swirling around this product, and that DC brand is pretty much tarnished, and it's going to require a heavy rebuild. And what if I was working at Warner Brothers, I would say this, it's time to just start focusing on the future, the post, what I call the post Dido era, and start focusing on rebuilding this brand because you have one of the best catalogs of comic characters out there, but because you have poor management, nobody wants to bother with the product. The product is tarnished by, a decade and a half of dysfunction, negative energy. It's just not there, and it's like people are frustrated, they're angry because nobody's coming at them with the right type of energy, the right type of enthusiasm. When you have a manager who sits there and can't even make a product that can be explained easily to a 4 year old, there's something wrong with the management there, and it's time, for change. And that's why I say that the product is going to be rebooted by the next new editor in chief. And the next new editor in chief is probably going to make a product that pretty much resembles the older DC universe, where there is a Justice Society that happened in the Golden Age, and that we're coming in on Superman and Batman and the formation of the Justice League in the first year, the formation of the Teen Titans in the second year, and the universe will build from there. And that's where I think that the new DC universe would probably come into. And sadly, you might lose some things like great characters like Cassandra Cain or Tim Drake and other great characters that came up in the 90s. But unfortunately, that has to be done because of all the creative damage, structural damage to the DC Universe. DC Universe was, I say, workable until maybe about 2006 or 2007. But over the last 4 or 5 years, the brand has been pretty much damaged by over a decade and a half of bad stories. I mean, one of the ones that I think pretty much put the nail in the DC Universe coffin was even before 2006, 2007, the Identity Crisis. That was one of the worst stories that was ever produced. And, if I was an editor-in-chief, I would have put a kill fee on that story, and we wouldn't have published it because the damage to the continuity and the damage to the brand, pretty much it trickles down from there. And I even go back to even Graduation Day, another one I would probably put a kill fee on and not publish because I'd rather not publish a story than have a story go to print and then it does, structural damage to the continuity and then later on does structural damage to the brand. And I look at the DC Comics brand and all these bad stories pretty much have done so much damage that the entire universe, the structures that support it, you can't wrap any form around it anymore because the structure is completely damaged by too many stories focused on continuity and past history instead of focusing on developing characters in the present. And, a good editor has a good vision and understands that you have to focus on developing your stories so that they have, long term, because each story you create connects with another story, and each story fits into a longer term, bigger picture. Now, I don't think that anybody at DC understands how to create a bigger picture. Everybody's focused on, the short, which is, these events that happen every year, but they're not focusing on how each of these events affect the bigger picture of the overall universe and how, all this focus on death and gore and violence and all this moodiness and emotionalism pretty much is turning off, you know, regular comic fans and even casual readers. Because when I look at the DC brand again, most people feel this negative energy swirling around the brand. They feel the negative energy swirling around the product. Again, it's like Disney in the '70s, or even another. Was a couple other brands that I've studied. Um, that it had this negative energy swirling around it. You can't sell a product with a negative energy swirling around it. And whenever people say the name Dido, they associate it with DC Comics, and they also associate it with negative energy. I mean, I saw a lot of that coming into the DC Universe Classics line from Mattel. I saw it coming into the DC um, Club Infinite Earth subscription, and I saw that same negative energy swirling around even the old DC Multiverse line for the 3 3/4 inch figures. Whenever you had any product outside of DC featuring DC characters, again has negative energy. Same thing with Man of Steel the movie, and the same thing with Batman v Superman, and even with the new 6 inch that just came out, DC Multiverse line. There's a lot of negative energy swirling around this product, and when you have this type of energy swirling around a product, it dampens the sales, it dampens the enthusiasm, and people just don't want to buy this product. And more importantly, they don't want to share it with their friends. And that's why I say there's going to be another reboot, because the new editor in chief does not want to bring all that negative baggage into their product. And they want their product, to have that positive energy, that positive enthusiasm. They want to bring people together. Comics are supposed to be a family thing. They're supposed to be something that people share. It's supposed to be something that, puts a smile on a child's face. It's supposed to be something that you can give to a 4 or 5 year old. And you haven't been able to do that with a DC comic in almost 15 years. And that's the saddest thing about it, because people want to give comics to their kids. I've sat down and read numerous boards, watched numerous videos, and I've heard people say, I want to share DC comics with my kids. I want to be able to give my kid a Batman comic without gory homicide in it. I want to be able to give my kids a Green Lantern comic without a gory homicide in it. I want to see a Superman that stands for truth and justice and is just a nice guy who wants to do the right thing. I want to see a Wonder Woman, who goes out and fights for justice. They don't want to see angry, bitter superheroes. I mean, if you look at the Marvel Studios, that's the way superheroes are supposed to be. They're happy, they're enthusiastic, they're out there, fighting the good fight. Yes, they have hard times, and yes, they have their issues, but people are tired of the darkness. I mean, comics as they stand are supposed to be an escape. And when you look at a DC comic, all they're doing is bringing you a problem. And that's why I say the universe pretty much has to be rebooted, because we need to get back to making comics an escape. We need to go back to making comics fun. And I see a lot of, great talent out there that want to do this. And those guys deserve to have a shot at creating the next generation of comics. And that can't be done until I say till there's a post-Dido era at DC Comics, because DC Comics, it's the number 2 brand, but it's starting to erode. And we look at the numbers. I looked at the numbers for the indies. The indies are gaining ground on DC. And it's just a matter of time. And that's why I say there's going to be another reboot, because this universe, as it stands, is so structurally damaged that you have to pretty much, from a creative standpoint, wipe the whole thing out and start all the way over completely from scratch, because there is no way to repair this thing. The decade and a half of Dido have pretty much destroyed this universe far beyond the repair of any team of creative people. No creative staff could pretty much repair this thing. It's just damaged beyond repair. I mean, you can come in with your convergence, but the whole thing is that you've killed all the entry points for anybody to come into the DC universe. I mean, if you've been reading Superman and then you had up to 2011, and then you come in 2015 and tell me, oh, all this stuff happened. Well, if I come in and I start looking for back issues to find out what went on, there's all this new 52 stuff that happened for the past 3 years. Then there's a stop point. I mean, you can't have that. That's confusing to people. You can't say that this universe ended in 2011, you stopped producing these stories, and then all of a sudden, say in 2015, oh, it'll just come right back and start all over again. That's ridiculous. I mean, That's like saying we canceled All My Children in, what is it, 2012 or 2013. Then we're just gonna pick up where All My Children left off. So all those viewers, they're sitting there going, they're shaking their heads, and then you have new people coming in going, "What's this all about?" It's confusion. The whole thing is that if you're gonna end the universe, you've ended it. And the whole thing is that once you've cut those ties, it's hard to get them started all over again. It's just like in business. We talk about this all the time. Once you lose a customer, they're pretty much gone. That means they're going over to competitors, and you're gonna have to work twice as hard to get them back. And the problem with with DC is that they don't know much about the relationship between the customer and the product. And when you have a product, pretty much, once the customer stops buying that product and they start buying a competitor's product, you're going to have to work twice as hard to get them back. And with this product, it's so damaged that, you know, outside of a super hard reboot where you pretty much start everything completely over, that's the only way you're going to get this customer back. That's the only way to get the veteran customer back. And that's the only way you're going to be able to get the new reader in, because both of them are sitting there going, "What happened? There's no entry point for me. I can't come in because everything is confusing. Everything is all over the place, and I don't know what direction anything is going in." Um, and with the way the stories have been crafted, these big, long, multi-year sagas, it made it impossible to break in. And then you have people now coming in telling you that this is a DCU and there's everything for you. And it's multiple universes. It's just confusing. And with the way comics cycle out these days, it also becomes a problem because you have books that come in every within 6 months to a year. They're pretty much canceled, and that's another big problem with it. But I look at this DC universe, and again, I see it pretty much. You're gonna seeing a hard reboot because I don't think this Dido era is gonna last much longer. It's pretty much dysfunctional, and the sales just aren't there. I mean, DC has lost a lot of ground, a lot of market share, and again, it reminds me so much of Disney in the '70s that I see the next executive coming in and just pretty much doing what Michael Eisner did back in the '70s, where he just took that entire Disney brand and he gutted everything and then rebuilt it and then gave us classics like Brave Little Toaster, Little Mermaid, um, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. And if it wasn't for him doing that rebuild, we wouldn't have those modern classics, and we wouldn't have Pixar and all these other things. And that's what's going to have to happen with DC. You're going to have to see, a complete wipeout of all the old stuff. Yes, they'll probably find some way to keep it valid or keep it historically fitting into something, but it'll have to be a new point from here on in, just like the new Disney was in the '90s. And moving forward, they had to move forward in order to create new products for the next generation and make it accessible. And that's the direction I see DC going in. I see it being just like Eisner's Disney, a place where it's family friendly, family accessible, and the new editor in chief is going to have to create a vision for DC that sells family oriented products, family friendly products, and keeping everything on a PG or PG-13 level, so that children as young as 4 or 5 years old can start getting back into comics again, because the comic medium is a great storytelling medium, and what superheroes, your Superman and your Batman, should be family friendly and family oriented. And I see a step away from all this realism and a return to the escapism, because that's what sells comics. That's what sells comics to a large general audience, and that's what makes comics accessible to a large general audience. And yeah, I see this reboot coming. I don't care what Dan Dido says. This product is completely damaged. When you have your executive who cannot even create a product that can be explained on a store shelf easily, you have a problem. And if anybody who is an executive will tell you the exact same thing, you cannot have your executive sitting there continuing to explain a product over and over again if you hope to sell it. The product has to sell itself, and the people have to be able to make a product that's so easy that's easy to sell that people have no problem picking it up and have no problem sharing it with each other. And the only way I see this negative energy being dissipated from the DC Comics brand is if the Dido editorial regime is pretty much, fired and replaced with new people. That's the only way you're going to dissipate all that negative energy and bring that enthusiasm back to that DC Comics brand, because that DC Comics brand, as it stands right now, is not in good shape. It, again, reminds me of Disney in the 1970s, and it's not where it should be. I mean, DC Comics should be in a place where it can compete with Marvel Studios. They should be creating comics that get people excited about the characters and get them anticipating um, their movies. It should be a product that synergizes with their films, and it should be a product that gets people, enthusiastic about going to these movies and spending money on merchandise. People should be sitting there ready to go out, and when they see a DC announcement, have a smile on their face. They should be ready to go to the message boards and talk about what they want to buy, not sitting there talking about what's so lousy about everything. We really need, a complete change in the whole Warner Brothers management system, because again, the energy is not there to get people excited about this product. You really need to get people who are going to be passionate and enthusiastic, and they need to radiate that positive energy to all the people out there so that they can get excited about these products. I mean, that's what I saw, back in 2008 with the DC Universe Classics line, before the negative energy started swirling into that. And we really need to get back to that positive energy. We really need to get people excited. Whenever I hear a Marvel Studios announcement, I hear nothing but enthusiasm, nothing but excitement. I hear people talking about how they're going to buy tickets. And these are months in advance. They're talking about buying tickets. They're talking about pre-ordering action figures. People want that product. And you want to get people that excited for a product. And this is something that has to come back to the DC brand if it's going to survive. You really need to get those people. You really need an editor in chief that's going to get people, when they come to work, to have a smile on their face, to say, I look forward to working with these characters. I look forward to being a part of this team, and I see something great coming out of this company, and that I see something exciting about it. And this is what people want to see. They want to see all of that. They want to see that type of leadership come there, and you need that type of positive energy. And this is not something you're seeing with this current DC product, or with this DC management. They really need a new leader, and they really need a new direction that really will start getting people to come together and see comics as fun, escapist entertainment that's here for the whole family, and not just for the people, the DC zombies or the emo people. They need something that's just going to bring everybody together and, again, get people really excited about this product.